It's time for match number 8 in CPL 2020. The Guyana Amazon Warriors against the Jamaica Talawas. Let's build our fantasy team then on my 11th Circle Fantasy Pick on ESPN Cricinfo. I'm Ronald Kapoor and I'm all set to be joined alongside Darren Ganga. Right, let's start with our pro tip then. And with a couple of games for every team and every franchise, we can pick a couple of players that have started CPL 2020 on a high. Among them, Phillips and Hetmyer, so highly rated, and we know how explosive he can be on his day. He features in our pro tip with 134 runs from 2 innings. And in the early days of the tournament, he is the leading run scorer of the season so far. Paul's 5 wickets are the joint most. So Paul and Hetmyer are 2 players that we want to back in this team. Let's have a word from Darren Ganga. I'm going to tell you in a minute from now, Darren, that neither of them are our captain choices, but Hetmyer and Paul have at least started this year's CPL on a good note.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of that has to do with the complement of players across both teams. A lot of reputable T20 players, so you can understand that. The one other thing that I'd like to add with regard to this pro tip is matches on Saturday. Those matches are being played on a very new pitch. So the first 3 days of Hero CPL 2020 was played on one pitch. So it's a very new pitch that is being used. So take that into consideration. Very little wear and tear. Seamers may thrive, and that is something may influence your decision in terms of your fantasy picks.
All right, that's a very important point that Darren's made there, and he is part of the broadcasting team for CPL 2020. So keep that in your calculations. Let's see how many spinners we get into our team. Before that, on the My 11 Circle Fantasy app, every user has 100 credits to pick their fantasy team, and they've got to pick players from 4 categories: wicketkeepers, batsmen, bowlers, and all-rounders. You can pick a maximum of 7 players from one team for any particular match. Every player's individual credit value is right there on the app for you to see. Let's move to our recommendations then. In spite of what we said about Hetmyer and Paul, Glenn Phillips is going to be our captaincy recommendation among our top picks. He has been one of the top 5 run getters last season in the CPL, and he's started the 2020 edition in similar fashion. 44 of 29 against the St. Lucia Zooks and 58 of 42 against the Knight Riders. So this is a man, in spite of his team's mixed fortunes in the opening games, you are seeing someone like Glenn Phillips contribute. So keep an eye out on him, and you don't want to be keeping Glenn Phillips out. We, in fact, are backing him to be captain of your team. Phillips and Hetmyer, we know what he's capable of when he gets going. And of the 29 T20 innings Hetmyer has had, he's been dismissed just 15 times in single digits. But that seems to be long gone now. His recent form has been excellent: 43 not out, 63 not out, and 71 in his last 3 T20 knocks. Now, you wonder if the law of averages will catch up, but we're backing Hetmyer to be vice-captain. Captain gives you double the points and vice-captain 1.5 times the points. Pick them very carefully. Paul, like we said, the sort of impact that he's had early on, picked up a 4-wicket haul against the Patriots, and we know he can contribute with bat as well. So someone like Paul is among our top picks. Imran Tahir too, with the wicket of his first ball in the power play against the Patriots, getting rid of Chris Lynn, and as a must-have in most T20 teams and most fantasy teams, you'd think Imran Tahir. Andre Russell's not quite been the Russell that we know and have come to love in 2020 cricket over the years, but he's struck at below 100 in both the games so far. But don't keep him out. We still feature Andre Russell in our top picks. Quick roundup then. Glenn Phillips is captain choice, Hetmyer is vice captain, and Paul, Imran Tahir, and Andre Russell among our top picks. Darren Ganga, thoughts on that?
Very solid picks there. Ronak, I also think you need to take into consideration that this Warriors team is a very balanced team. Remember, they're the most successful franchise team in the history of CPL. You look at that team on paper, solid team. You've picked 3 guys from the Warriors, which is quite good. And I expect that many of the persons playing this fantasy league will probably use their maximum of 7 persons coming from that Guyana Amazon Warriors team.
All right, let's move to our value picks. I think Darren will be pretty pleased to see Asif Ali does feature. We didn't recommend him the last time we were picking a fantasy team and his side featured, but he's right there now with a brisk 47 in the first game to steer his side to victory, and then a nice 22 too. You wonder why he's not part of the national side in England, but whatever those reasons are, at least we can recommend him in fantasy. Therefore, Mujibur Rahman features as well. He's playing his first CPL edition, but he's already shown his worth. 3 wickets in 2 matches and at a very good return of 4.75 runs per over. So keep Mujib in your calculations, and he's part of our value picks as well. Our full team then, Glenn Phillips and Nicholas Pooran as keeper options. Brandon King, Shimron Hetmyer, Ross Taylor's there as well as Rovman Powell and Asif Ali. And you've got Andre Russell, Kimo Paul, Mujibur Rahman and Imran Tahir to wrap it up. Darren, any more options that you'd like to throw in?
Look, one name that I think will feature throughout the CPL, Naveem Ul Haq. This young fast bowler reminds me of Jasprit Bumrah, and that's because of his supple wrists. He's got an unorthodox action. He bowls with a good amount of pace. He's exciting, so he brings a little bit of X factor to this team, this Guyana Amazon Warriors team. So I reckon you should look out for this guy, and if you have the chance, get this guy on your squad. Another player who has shown good form is Sandeep Lamachani, and he is the wrist spinner for the Talawas. He might feature if he doesn't pick wickets up. He's economical and he can build pressure for his partner on the other end. So those are two players you may want to consider and include in your squad.
All right, there you have it then. Some more options thrown in from Darren. We'll hear plenty more from him as CPL 2020 gets underway now. And a quick rider before we let you off. Look at the final teams and playing 11s before confirming your fantasy team in case for last minute injuries or selection calls. We'll be back more with plenty more analysis and expert opinion to help you pick your fantasy team on My 11 Circle Fantasy Pick on ESPN Cricinfo.